Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this show on the 30th day of August, 2021. And up our first graphic today is, I believe, or the second graphic, is the hazardous weather graphic. And there are no watches, warnings, advisories out for southern Alaska, the Panhandle. No advisories, watches, or warnings out for the interior all the way up to the Arctic coast or the Bering Sea coast. Aleutians, Bering Sea, looking good. No big storms expected into the area there for the next couple of days. And on satellite, you can see a band of clouds kind of lifting northward that has a tendency to move from east-southeast to west-northwest there. And then low pressure to the south of that. And then a band of clouds there over the northern Bering Sea, or actually north of St. Lawrence Island to the Seward Peninsula, streaming into the interior, bringing rainfall with that. Starting to diminish this afternoon, but that brought rain right into the central interior from the Seward Peninsula and scatters out to showers as it heads east, and then lighter amounts up to the north. But there was some precipitation up to, I believe it was 0.2 of an inch, fell at, let's see, up on the eastern Arctic coast, 0.2 of an inch or 0.15 fell, I believe it was at Dead Horse. Arctic Village only had 0.02 of an inch of precipitation. And otherwise quite light amounts of the westerly flow and the moisture that's dropping down out of the Arctic Ocean and then cutting eastward there across the North Slope and the Arctic coast. And otherwise high pressure, again clear skies there from Kodiak Island up into south central Alaska. Got some mid and high level cirrus spilling over the western Alaska range and kind of filtering down from the north there with that westerly flow. Basically high pressure aloft holding over southern Alaska, keeping mostly sunny and mild south of the Alaska range. And for the southeast coast, a disturbance kept a few isolated showers over the southern area there with cloudy skies today, but you can see clearing showing up Prince of Wales Island, mostly sunny over the northern panhandle there with temperatures approaching or getting in the lower 70s. Hoonah at 2 p.m. at 70 degrees. So that we'll probably see a high in the lower 70s. Mostly sunny over the Copper River Basin. Again, kind of a chilly morning. Chisana down to 22 degrees for their low there in the eastern Copper River Basin or east of the Copper River. Otherwise, mostly clear skies. Again, south and east of the Alaska Range, and mostly dry, but more clouds west of the Alaska Range, especially west of the Kuskokwim Mountains. A few isolated showers along the Yukon Delta. And then an area of rain from the Seward Peninsula, east-northeast there across the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley, northern upper Yukon Valley areas. Lighter amounts as you head northeast there. But Indian Mountain had about a third of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours. And Anatuvik Pass, 0.15 of an inch. So nothing heavy, but the 24-hour amounts are more impressive. But 12-hour amounts sort of suggest a lightening up of the precipitation, about 0.2 falling at Nome, and then just isolated showers south of that area to Sunshine, southern Alaska. And a front weakening, let me back that up one, a front weakening there over the Alaska Peninsula brings some light rain. Gusty winds though, Cold Bay had gusts to 35 miles an hour, St. George Island, gusts out of the south and southeast. East-southeast St. George Island, 32 miles an hour. Cold Bay, south-southeast at 35 miles an hour. And Port Hayden starting to pick up in the southeast wind, seeing gusts to about 25 miles an hour this afternoon. And that southeast wind helping to clear the skies there on the lee side of the Aleutian Range and the Alaska Peninsula up toward Bristol Bay. But a fair amount of clouds, lower clouds over the southwest interior. And for tonight, the forecast, dry for Kodiak Island, but look for an increase in the clouds. Those clouds that are long and just off to your east, they'll probably shift inland, definitely covering the entire east side, Fognak Island as well. Otherwise, central southern Alaska stays dry, and Panhandle, mostly clear with a few clouds, but all the showers off to the east and southeast. And there weren't that many today to begin with anyway, but for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, still a risk of some rain or snow showers, light precipitation amounts. Got to get about 1,000 feet in the Brooks Range for that to be in pure snow, but that's going to be hard to come by, pure snow up there, or just precipitation in general, with showers back out to the southwest, mostly over the Seward Peninsula, northern Seward Peninsula. Still drying out for Nome to White Mountain and Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. Periods of rain for the Fox Islands and Pribilofs. Breezy conditions with the winds not much of a problem. Westerlies maybe up to 20 knots for the western central Aleutians with clouds and showers. And the forecast for tomorrow, Tuesday, looking pretty good again. May see some variable cloudiness over Cook Inlet, but the showers, which aren't that many, will stay west of the Alaska Range. There are mostly some afternoon showers possible. Toledo, northern Kuskokwim Valley, but nothing too significant, and less shower activity with a trough up to the north there, just scattered showers from the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, across central Brooks Range into the northern Kobuk Valley, on out to the northern Seward Peninsula. Southeast coast, mostly sunny, warm again, 65 to 75 for your highs. And look for increasing clouds, increasing chances of rain for Kodiak Island as well as Bristol Bay, possibly even Kamishak Bay. That'll probably hold off until tomorrow night. And then Wednesday, that low strengthens, moves northeastward, just east-southeast of Kodiak now. Probably looking at gale force winds in a narrow band in advance of that front into the offshore Gulf of Alaska water areas. But winds stay light, skies mostly sunny over the Panhandle and the eastern interior. Western interior, bear chance of some scattered showers and more cloudiness, but no big storms. Another front brings rain to the Alaska Peninsula. Rain changes to showers to the Pribilofs and eastern Aleutians. Lows tonight, 45 to 52 southern Alaska, with highs tomorrow, upper 50s to lower 60s. Some areas may reach the mid 60s, like the southern southeast coast, to sit in a valley possibly. And for the lows the following morning, much like you'll see tomorrow morning, 45 to 53, a little milder, a little more prevalent in the 50s for the southeast coast, and bump it up 2 or 3 degrees for the highs on Wednesday. Copper River Basin, 60s, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak, upper 50s near 60 for Bristol Bay. And up in the interior, lows tonight, 30 to 35, Arctic Coast North Slope, mid to upper 40s south of the Brooks Range into the central interior. Highs tomorrow, warmest over Torrid Eagle, Northway and Tok, lower 60, 60, 65, otherwise upper 50s, slowly cooling off to the mid 40s out toward the Bering Strait, and 30s for the Arctic Coast and North Slope. Lows again, 30 to 35, Arctic Coast, North Slope areas, 40s south of the mountains, and the highs for Wednesday afternoon, lower to mid 60s, eastern interior, near 60 for Fairbanks, Nenana. Otherwise, upper 40s for the Bering Strait and Seward Peninsula. Upper 40s for your lows for the Bering Sea tonight, near 50 for Bristol Bay. Highs tomorrow in the 50s, mid to upper in those areas, and followed by lows again in the 40s to near 50. And then highs pushing 60 in the inland areas of the southwest interior. Otherwise, in the mid 50s there for the Pribilofs. Mid to upper 50s for the Alaska Peninsula. Could see 60, 61 degrees there, maybe Pilot Point in those locations.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, first line weather graphic for Tuesday morning. Marshall VFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast and beyond with IFR, southern slopes of the Brooks Range from the Koyukuk, Kobuk Valleys, westward in Kotzebue Sound, across Seward Peninsula, northern Bering Sea, and just a narrow band of marginal VFR there south of St. Matthew Island, north of the Pribilofs though, but southeastern Bering, marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula marginal, southwest, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into the Kuskokwim Valley marginal VFR, right up to the Alaska Range, and then that stays to the north and west, south of the mountains there, Bristol Bay actually also, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, all VFR right up into the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, and most of the Panhandle marginal VFR, Lynn Canal, Elfin Cove, and the North Gulf Coast VFR. And for the afternoon, for Tuesday afternoon, IFR now covers just about all the Bering Sea, Aleutians, and up across the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, northeastward there, across the Kotzebue, Selawik Valley, Kobuk Valley, into the Brooks Range and the eastern Arctic coast. VFR holding, high pressure. Some marginal VFR over the southwest interior, but along and east of the Alaska Range and south of the Alaska Range. Good VFR again tomorrow, but some marginal VFR creeping up into Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast. And module VFR now down over the southern panhandle, becoming VFR to the north. And for Wednesday, creeping IFR there, coming northward there into southern Prince William Sound and possibly southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak, Kachemak Bay, and Kodiak Island, with marginal VFR into northern Cook Inlet, it looks like, and the western Susitna Valley, Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range, and IFR, northeast interior, actually the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southwestward, expanding as you head southwest across the Seward Peninsula, all of the Bering Sea IFR, all of the Aleutians IFR, Alaska Peninsula, same forecast IFR, and the Panhandle VFR. And for Wednesday afternoon, VFR expands again over the southern part of the state. Now we just have a narrow band of IFR up there to the north and northwest, St. Lawrence Island, and across Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, and along the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range, northern Koyukuk Valley, some IFR, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southern Kodiak Island IFR, northern Kodiak Island, Fognak Island marginal, Bristol Bay, coastal areas, marginal VFR, but again, good VFR, southern Alaska and the Panhandle. And for the passes, Anatuvik, IFR tomorrow mostly, and mostly IFR also for Adigan. Means it could be marginal VFR at times. Probably not VFR though. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR day tomorrow, other than some mid and high level clouds. And rainy VFR. Windy VFR. And Isabel also VFR in the forecast again. Same thing for Mentasta, VFR. Tanita, VFR, Portage, another VFR day there, and Chilkoot and White, looking good, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, western central Beaufort Sea coast, and down to about Barter Island there on the east side, 2,000 feet just to the south of that. Otherwise, a pretty tight gradient there along and north of the Bering Strait, but about 8 to 10,000 feet, Bering Sea, southern Alaska, a little cooler over the southern panhandle. Icing, not much of a threat, really minimal icing potential over the interior, and best chance would be there along the Alaska Peninsula on the Pacific side, with a heavier icing staying well south of Kodiak Island, so not too bad. Eastern Bering Sea could be some isolated light rime or mixed icing there right up to the Yukon Delta coast. Jet stream, good flow. West-northwesterlies, 50 to 70 knots or 50 to 80 knots, strongest there over the western Brooks Range along mountains. Turn northerly at 50 knots across the Panhandle, up to 80 knots there around Stewart and Hyder, or over Stewart and Hyder. Otherwise, much lighter flow over the Bering Sea with the Pacific Jet south of the Aleutians. And at 9,000 feet, 25 to 40 knot winds there in northern interior, and southwest or west southwest 20 to 35 knots at the most there for the southeast Bering eastern Aleutians. And at 3,000 feet, 25 to 30 knot winds and 20 to 25 knot west southwesterlies translates into some light to isolated moderate chop there from the Yukon Flats southwestward to the eastern Norton Sound, and maybe a little bumpier there for the lee side of the Alaska Peninsula.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Carrie, Haisley, Chief of the Emergency Services and Multimedia Branch for the National Weather Service in Anchorage. With me today I have Dr. Doug Wesley, a physical scientist for the National Weather Service Alaska Region Headquarters. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Carrie. Hello.
Hello. So you're here to talk to us a little bit about something called AKwx, which is the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. And I understand that AKwx is a network of volunteers who take weather observations. Can you tell us a little bit more about what AKwx is?
Yes, it began in the lower 48, 20 some years ago, and it's expanded during those 2 decades. They're getting something like 10 to 15,000 rainfall reports per day from the lower 48.
Wow, that's a lot of different reports. So how many reports do we get in Alaska right now?
Well, it varies, maybe 10 to 25. But if you consider the large areas we're talking about, we have a lot of gaps to fill. Any observation is better than no observation, but there are large areas in Alaska. Alaska covers 3 million square miles. There's a lot of data gaps in that space, so we'd like to enhance it.
Sure. So tell us then a bit about why these observations are so important to Alaska and why we need to expand the number of them that we're getting.
Yes, Alaska, as you know, has large areas with a lot of complex terrain, and there are no weather observing stations or radar. So CoCoRaHS can help fill the data gaps, so you can at least get some idea of what's actually falling from the sky at those locations. CoCoRaHS increases the amount of timely weather observations available to meteorologists and other decision makers, especially in hazardous type of weather, both rain and snow and the occasional hailstorm that we get up here. CoCoRaHS observations can help forecasters identify long-term precipitation and snowfall trends in a climate sense. And just overall, they increase the amount of timely weather observations available to the public.
So then let's talk a little bit about each of the different types of observations. So it's the rain, hail, and snow network. So let's start by talking a little bit about rain observations and tell us a little bit about how you take those and how long it takes a volunteer to get a rain observation.
Okay, this is a 4-inch gauge, just the basic gauge, which you use for both rain and snowfall. But the rain observations are pretty quick. It's a matter of 2 or 3 minutes that each volunteer goes out and takes a reading, and then they enter these on the computer, and they're immediately available for observation on the computer and on the maps, so that you can see your report. In the wintertime, it's a little bit more complicated. We require the observers to measure not only the snow accumulation, but also liquid equivalent. So they've got to melt the snowfall. This involves 2 of these gauges and a snowboard. And it's maybe a 10-minute observation per day during the winter. But the snowfall is so variable that even across town and in especially the remote areas, it's crucial that we increase this number of snow observations in the network.
Right. I understand that we can only take observations in places where we have weather service offices. And so we rely on all of these volunteers to help us fill gaps. And it's also interesting to know how snowfall varies across like large spaces or even small cities. So I notice here in Anchorage, for example, we can have a vastly different amount of snow on the east side of town and the west side of town. And so it seems like these observations would help us to better understand what's going on in places besides just where the office is.
That's correct. In any given snowfall, there are typically large variances, as you know, and we rely on reports from the public and from National Weather Service cooperative spotters to map out the snowfall that occurs so that we can predict it better in the future.
Sure. So we talked about rain observations and we talked about snow observations, and you said for each of those, if it's rain, it only takes a couple minutes, and then it can take about 10 minutes if it's snow. Hail was the other one that we didn't talk about yet. Tell us just a little bit about the hail observations that CoCoRaHS observers take.
Yeah, the CoCoRaHS network, it has a hail pad, and it's just a simple block of styrofoam covered with aluminum foil, and you can approximate the size of hail by measuring the dent that the hail causes on the pad. And this can give us an estimate of hail size. We don't get hail very often in Alaska, but I've seen it 2 or 3 times in my 5 years in Anchorage, and some of it up to a ½ inch. And I'm sure there's been larger hail up in the interior at times.
So let's talk a little bit about how these rain, hail, and snow observations can help forecasters. So we have people who forecast the weather, and we also have people who work on the hydrology side, and I can see that maybe CoCoRaHS will be beneficial to both of them. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it's beneficial to the hydrologic forecaster who's concerned about flooding, and rainfall comprises one of the causes of a flood, or it can exacerbate high water conditions. So the more the hydrologist has to look at in terms of data from recent rainfall, the more information they have to work with when they're generating a forecast. The weather forecasters in the wintertime at the Weather Service office can use these observations also to help with past case studies, to verify model data, and to get a handle on what's actually happening out the window. And that's important in the forecast process.
Yeah, it seems like you can never have too much information when you're issuing a forecast. So it only takes a few minutes most of the time to take these observations. So let's say I'm interested in becoming a volunteer for CocoRaz. How do I get involved?
Yeah, the website is very useful, cocoraz.org, and it has a number of video-based training tutorials that take you right on from measuring rainfall to a video tutorial on measuring snowfall. It has the maps available in real time, and you can go back and look at that old data too through those maps. And so it's a very useful, comprehensive website.
Very interesting. And anybody can get involved, right? You don't have to be a meteorologist.
That's right. And, we love to have 24, once a day reports throughout the year, but if you can't, then so be it. And we have observers, some observers are out of town for periods of time, or maybe they can only report, a week or two of precipitation, but it's still useful. It's still data that we look at. So the more the better, but you can get involved even if you aren't at a location 24/7.
Doug, I really appreciate you coming on to our program today to talk about CocoRaz. Hopefully we can have you back in the studio at some point so we can talk more about it and then talk more about the different types of observations and the tools that observers use.
That would be great. Yeah.
So thank you for your time, and thank you so much for joining this edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing still some areas of thin ice along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, Barrier Island areas. Otherwise, winds are expected, or light wind pattern for the next few days up there, so really not looking at any big changes in the overall sea ice pattern here, except just kind of shifting around with the currents and the breezes. Moving on to coastal water forecasts. Southeast coast, northwest 15 to 20 knots there on the south coast for the day Tuesday, 4 to 5 foot seas. West northwest breeze at 10 to 15 knots on the north coast, seas just 3 to 4 feet. Light winds from the north or northwest over the inside waters, interchannel areas. Seas pretty slight, 2 feet, give or take. And for the day on Wednesday, we've got call it southeast 10 for Lynn Canal, otherwise light variable winds for the central and southern inside waters. And for the south coast, Prince of Wales Island coastline there, west at 15, central coast south at 20, seas at about 4 feet, and then small craft advisories developing for the north coast as winds, southeast winds pick up to 25 knots. And for Prince William Sound, for the day Tuesday, east winds 10 knots, north winds 10 knots for northern Cook Inlet, northeast 15 south of the Forelands, Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots, 30 knot winds out of the east with 10 foot seas for the Barren Islands and the western North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots, but southeast 20 around Middleton Island. Outlook for Wednesday, Prince William Sound, winds pick up some, east 20 knots, seas 3 feet or so. And small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet, northeast winds kicking up to 30 knots with seas building to 10 feet. Gale warnings out for Kamishak Bay, northeast 35, and 45 knot winds, full gales for the Barren Islands, east 45 knots, 14 foot seas, and gale warnings also out for the western North Gulf Coast. Almost a gale for the eastern North Gulf Coast, but call it small craft advisories, east winds sustained at 30 knots. And for Kodiak Island, east-northeasterlies tomorrow, 30 knots, 9 to 10 foot seas. 15 knot winds for the Alaska Peninsula, east winds 15 for Bristol Bay, and northeast 20 from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. Look for light variable winds on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula on Wednesday, otherwise Pacific side, southwest at 15, northeast 15 for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, east side there, southerlies 30 knots, 10 foot seas. Shelikof Strait looking at a northeast wind at 30 knots with 9 foot seas. On Alaska Island, south-southwest 15 knots, 3 to 6 foot seas. Unmak Island, southwest 15 to 20 knots, west-southwest 20 knots, Adak and Atka, and west 15 for Amchitka Island. Kiskadeshimia, northeast 15. 15-knot winds continue there for the western Aleutians from Kiska to Shimia out of the southeast, Kamchatka Island southwest at 15, Adak and Atka, west-southwest 20 knots, and fairly light winds continue for the Fox Islands, all out of the southwest at 15 to 20 knots with seas 3 to 6 feet. Southwest coast, east winds 20 knots for the day Tuesday, 4 to 5 foot seas, light variable winds for the Pribilof, so seas down to 4 feet. 20-knot winds St. Matthew Island and east 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And for Wednesday, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. About the same for the Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 15. Kuskokwim Delta coastline, south of Nunivak Island, east at 15, seas 4 feet. Light variable winds again for the Pribilof Islands, 10 knots, and north 20 for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast, west-southwest, 10 knots, about the same for the central coast as well. Seas pretty slight all along those areas. Southeast 15 for the western Arctic coast, and then from Cape Thompson down to Wales, winds will be east at 15 with 3-foot seas. And for Wednesday, 20-knot winds from the east for the eastern Boulevard Sea coastline, central coast east at 15, the west side northeast winds at 15 knots, all the way down to Cape Thompson, then from Cape Thompson to Wales, north winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. For tonight, still some isolated rain or snow shower activity for the Brooks Range on out to the eastern Arctic coast, and showers on the decrease there over the northwest interior, Kobuk Valley westward to the northern Seward Peninsula. Dry southern Alaska and dry for the Panhandle. And out west, chance of rain arrives on the southwest coast during the day tomorrow and pushes in Bristol Bay. Same thing for Kodiak Island, increasing chances of rain. Another weak front brings rain to the Alaska Peninsula. And pretty unsettled for the Aleutians, but a little drier out west, and sunshine again for the Panhandle and the eastern interior, high 60s to maybe lower 70s possible again. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.